There's a lane that most people don't take, not because they've been told not to, not because it's marked on any map as something to avoid, but because something in the body, some instinct older than language, older than thought, quietly suggests that you might want to take the other road tonight. People walk past it every day. They glance down it, and then they look away. The lane is narrow, old hedgerow on both sides, grown in close, the kind that hasn't been cut back in years. In summer it holds the light differently, slower, thicker, like the air itself is considering something. In autumn, the leaves come down sideways, not blown, just drifting, as if they're not entirely sure they should be falling at all. And in the depths of winter, when frost closes everything else in silence, the lane stays clear. That, more than anything, is what people notice. The frost never settles on the lane. At the end of the lane, there's a gate. Old iron, the kind that has been cold so long it has forgotten it was ever anything else. It stands open, not broken open, not forced, simply open, as it always is. The letting agent mentioned it on the day I arrived, almost as an afterthought. The way you mentioned something you've stopped trying to explain. She said, the gate doesn't stay latched. It's just a thing about the gate. I asked her how long she'd been managing the property. She looked at her clipboard. She said, since my mother retired. She didn't say how long that was, and I didn't ask. I pushed the gate closed behind me when I went in that first evening. By morning, it was open again, not swung wide, just open, precisely as wide as a person would leave it stepping through in no particular hurry. The house itself is stone, the old kind of stone, the kind that absorbs the colour of the sky above it, grey in rain, warm amber at dusk, almost white on clear mornings. It's small, 2 windows upstairs, 2 down, a door set deep in the wall, the lintel worn smooth. Someone has worn it smooth, many someones, many hands resting there, just as mine did. The first time I paused at the threshold. The garden is considered, not maintained exactly, but not abandoned either. The roses grow where they grow. The old apple tree leans the way old apple trees lean, but nothing has taken over. Nothing is choking anything else. There is a feeling in that garden, and I noticed it immediately, before I noticed anything else, of something being tended, not by anyone you could see, not in any way you could point to, just tended. The kettle is always warm. I mentioned this, I think, when I first began, but I want you to understand what I mean by always. Not warm in the morning because someone rose early and made tea. Not warm in the evening because dinner was recently done. Warm at 2 in the morning. Warm on the days I was away. Warm when I came back after a week and opened the door into the cold hallway and walked straight through to the kitchen and put my hand on it. Warm. I thought about it for a long time. I tried to find the explanation that would make me feel better about it. Old range, residual heat, insulation in the walls, something about the way the cottage faces south. I tried each of those explanations on. None of them fit. The range hasn't been lit in years. I know this because there is no fuel, no wood, no coal, no kindling. I looked, and the kettle is still warm. The fireplace in the sitting room is the old kind, deep, stone-lined, with an iron grate and a mantle of dark oak that has absorbed so much smoke over so many years that it has become almost black. I lit a fire on my second evening. Proper wood from the basket in the hall. Whoever stocks the house keeps it supplied. I've never seen who does it. I've never heard anyone. The basket is simply full. When I check in the morning, the fire I lit burned low and steady for hours. The kind of fire that asks nothing of you. You don't need to tend it. You don't need to add to it. It simply burns. I sat in the chair by the hearth and I read for a while. Or I tried to read. What I mostly did was watch the fire. And I had the very distinct feeling, sitting there in that warm room with the dark outside the windows, that something was watching it too. Not me. The fire. As if fire in that room meant something. There are candles throughout the house, thick beeswax ones, set on old tin plates, placed on windowsills and shelves with what seems like deliberate care. I didn't like them, not at first, but on the third night, the electricity went out, briefly, just for a few minutes, and I reached for the nearest one out of habit. When the lights came back on, I left it burning. There is something about candlelight in that house that electric light doesn't reach. The shadows it makes are different, softer, but also deeper, more interested in the corners. I noticed, with candles lit, that the house had sounds it didn't have in bright light. Small sounds, a settling somewhere above, a creak that moved, not randomly, the way old houses creak, but in one direction, slowly, as if someone was walking very carefully, so as not to be heard. I held very still. The candle flame held very still too. Not a breath of wind to disturb it, which meant whatever was moving upstairs wasn't disturbing the air. The window in the east room looks out over the lane. Old glass, the kind that was made before they learned to make glass perfectly flat. When you look through it, the lane bends very slightly. The hedgerow lists a little to one side, and your own reflection, when the light is right, your own reflection looks back at you with an expression you don't quite recognize. Not frightening, not threatening, just slightly wrong, like a photograph of yourself taken in a moment you don't remember. I started sitting by that window in the evenings. I don't know when I decided to. I don't think I did decide. The chair was there. The window was there. The lamp was behind me. Just so. And I found myself sitting, evening after evening, watching the lane. Most nights it was empty. The hedgerow, the dark, the very occasional car, far off, its headlights sweeping. But on the fourth night, I saw someone. It had been raining since mid-afternoon. Not hard. The slow, patient kind of rain that doesn't announce itself, doesn't perform, just settles in, the way old grief settles in, quietly occupying every available space. The drops ran down the old glass in crooked paths. I watched them. I had nothing else to watch. And then I stopped watching the raindrops and started watching the lane behind them, through them, and there was a figure, standing at the gate, still, completely still, in the rain. No coat, as far as I could see. No umbrella, just standing there, facing the house. I stood up slowly from the chair. I pressed close to the glass. My breath fogged it. I wiped it with my sleeve. By the time my sight cleared, The lane was empty. The gate was open. As always, the rain continued. The drops still ran in their crooked paths. And I stood there for a long time, watching, wondering whether I had seen anything at all. The hallway at night is a different place. In the daytime, it's just a hallway. Stone floor, worn smooth, a coat hook on the wall, a mirror with a dark frame that shows you the front door and a sliver of the room beyond. At night, with just the light from the kitchen falling across the threshold, the hallway becomes longer than it is in daylight. The coat hook casts a shadow that doesn't look like a coat hook, and the mirror shows not quite the same thing. I don't mean it shows something that isn't there. Nothing as dramatic as that. I mean it shows the room behind you in a way that is very slightly delayed. I noticed this one evening. I raised my hand, and my reflection raised its hand just after. Not much. A fraction. I stood there for a while, very still, watching the mirror watch me. Eventually I walked past it. I kept my eyes ahead. I do that now. When I pass, I keep my eyes ahead. The stairs creak. This is not unusual. Old houses, old stairs. What is unusual is the order. There are 7 steps. I know this because I counted them on my first morning in the way you count things in a new place. When I go up, steps 1, 3, 5 creak. When I come down, steps 2, 4, 6. Always, every time. I tried to alter it. I tried stepping on different boards, shifted my weight, moved closer to the wall. It made no difference. The same steps creak. 1, 3, 5 going up. 2, 4, 6 coming down. I mentioned this to the letting agent the next time she called to check in. There was a pause on the line. Then she said, "Yes, that's just how the stairs are." She moved on quickly after that, to ask about the boiler, I think, or the water pressure. I let her. The curtains in the bedroom are heavy. Dark wall, the colour of winter earth. They block the light entirely. On still nights, they hang perfectly still. On the night I'm thinking of, a night with no wind, no sound from outside, windows closed and latched. The curtain on the left side moved, not dramatically, a slow, gentle movement, the kind a curtain makes when a window is open just a little. But the window wasn't open. I lay in bed and watched it. In the dark I could just make out its shape, the way it shifted, once, then settled. I thought, a draft from under the door, a gap in the old stonework, something so small I couldn't feel it, just enough to stir heavy wool. I thought these things very carefully, in order, each one held up and examined, and the curtain moved again. I pulled the covers up. I turned over. In the morning the curtain was perfectly still, and the window was closed, and I felt, in the sensible morning light, a little foolish, only a little. I found the journal on a Thursday, on a shelf in the study, the kind of shelf you think is empty until the light from a particular angle finds it. Brown leather, no name on the cover, no date on the spine. Inside, 40 years of careful handwriting, deliberate, upright. A person who thought before they wrote, who considered each word before committing it. Most entries were unremarkable. Weather, small repairs, a bird seen in the garden, a type I didn't recognize, a visitor, mentioned once, not described. I read for a long time. The afternoon light moved across the room, and near the back, midwinter. By the date, the last entry in the book. 1 line, 4 words. It happened again tonight. That was all. No entry before it explaining what it was. No entry after. The rest of the journal was blank. I sat with it for a while. I thought about the word again. About what it implies. That it had happened before. More than once. Enough times that it had become, in a way, expected. I closed the journal. I placed it back exactly as I had found it. The next morning, it was gone. I went into the garden that night. I don't know why. A decision I made standing at the back door with my coat already on. As if some part of me had decided before I had. The air was cold and very still. The garden at night is different to the garden in day. You know this. Intuitively, every garden at night is different. But this garden, at night, in the cold and the quiet, it felt occupied. Not threateningly so. Not in any way I could name. But the way a room feels occupied when someone is sitting very quietly in the corner, not moving, not speaking. You feel the weight of them. I stood on the path for a while. The frost hadn't come, as it never does here. The apple tree was a shape against a dark sky. Somewhere beyond the wall, a fox called once, and then everything was silent again. I went back inside. I locked the door, and then I stood at the kitchen window and looked out at the garden for a very long time. Nothing moved, but it still felt occupied. There's a clock on the mantelpiece. An old mantel clock. Dark wood, brass fittings. The face is porcelain, slightly yellowed. It doesn't run. I noticed this on the first day. The hands are still. Stopped at 7 minutes past 11. I don't know whether morning or night. I wound it on the second day. Out of habit. I think. The kind of thing you do with a clock. It ran for about an hour, and then it stopped again. At 7 minutes past 11, I left it alone after that. But here is the thing about that clock. Every morning when I come downstairs, the minute hand has moved. Not far. A fraction. The way a clock moves when it's running very slowly. Too slowly to see in the moment. But by the end of the week, the hand has moved nearly a full turn. It returns to 7 past 11 by the time I leave on Sundays. I know this because I've started marking it, fairly lightly, in pencil. On the wall behind, something is keeping time, just not the same time as the rest of us. I left on a Saturday. I don't know why Saturday specifically. I had planned to stay the full month. The month wasn't finished. But when I woke that morning, the kettle was warm, as always. The teacup was on the table, turned just so, as always. And there was something in the quality of the morning, a stillness that was different from the ordinary stillness, that made me begin to fold my things. I didn't rush. I packed carefully. I didn't look at the mirror in the hallway. I walked the lane slowly, the hedgerow on either side, the cold air, the pale, flat light of a winter morning that reveals everything and illuminates nothing. At the end of the lane, I turned. The house looked the same. Smoke from the chimney, though I had not lit a fire that morning. Gate open, as always. The east window, glowing, with a light I had not left on. I stood there for a moment, and then I walked on. There is a lane that most people don't take. I understand now. Why? Not because something happened. Not because I was afraid. I wasn't afraid. I was something else, something without a clean name, something between recognition and the understanding that you are somewhere you are not quite meant to be. Some houses are already full, and some guests are not the first, and some presences have no interest in leaving, only in being noticed. My first night in the house, I did not sleep well, not from fear, not from any particular unease, simply from the house itself, its sounds, its rhythms, the way it breathed around me as houses do when they are settling. Old houses settle. Everyone says this, and it's true. But this house settled in a way that had direction, not random, not the expansion and contraction of old stone cooling after a warm day. This was more like a deliberate adjustment, the way a person adjusts in a chair, not to be more comfortable, but to accommodate something else that has sat down beside them. I lay in the dark and listened, and somewhere, in the middle of the night, I don't know what time, I didn't look, I heard, from directly below my room, a single, clear sound, a teacup being set down on a saucer, the particular ceramic click of it, unhurried, precise. I lay very still. Nothing followed it. In the morning, when I came downstairs, there was a cup on the kitchen table, clean, turned right side up, the way you leave a cup when you want it ready for morning. I had not left it there. There are photographs on the walls throughout the house, old ones, in old frames, the heavy kind with oval mounts and dark wood, the sepia kind, from a time before colour made everything ordinary. I looked at them closely, over several days. Most were of the house itself, the garden, the lane, the apple tree in blossom, looking exactly as it looks now, which was the first strange thing. But two of the photographs showed people. One, a woman standing in the garden, her back to the camera, looking at something at the far edge of the frame. Her face is not visible. She is wearing a dark dress and standing very still, in the way people only stand when they don't know they're being watched. The other, a family, or what might be a family, 3 figures, sitting in this sitting room, in this arrangement of chairs, 2 in the chairs by the fire, 1 in the smaller chair, set apart. The one in the smaller chair has their face turned slightly toward the camera, slightly, not enough to see clearly, enough to suggest they knew it was there. It had been raining since mid-afternoon. Not hard, the slow, patient kind of rain that doesn't announce itself, doesn't perform, just settles in, the way old grief settles in, quietly occupying every available space. The drops ran down the old glass in crooked paths. I watched them. I had a book open on my lap. I wasn't reading it. I was watching the rain on the old glass and then, gradually, watching through the rain, through the bends and the distortions of old glass, into the lane beyond. And there was a figure, standing at the gate, still, completely still, in the rain. No coat, as far as I could see. No umbrella, just standing there, facing the house. I stood up slowly. I pressed close to the glass. My breath fogged it. I wiped it with my sleeve. By the time my sight cleared, the lane was empty. The gate was open. As always, the rain continued. The drops still ran in their crooked paths, and I stood there for a long time, watching, wondering whether I had seen anything at all. I saw the figure again, 3 nights later. I had not been thinking about the first sighting, or rather, I had been thinking about it the way you think about something you've decided not to think about. Carefully, constantly, in the background. It was later, this time, after midnight. I had come downstairs for water and noticed, out of habit now, the lane through the east window. The figure was there, same position, same stillness, at the gate, in the dark. I stood at the window for a long time looking at it. It stood at the gate for a long time looking at the house. Eventually, I went back upstairs. I don't know why I didn't go out. I don't know why I didn't call out. I think, if I'm honest, I didn't want to disturb it. Whatever it wasn't frightening. It had the quality of something that had stood in that spot many times before. Something with a habit. Something with a reason. Something keeping watch. I came back to the window at 2 a.m. The lane was empty. But the gate, for the first time since I arrived, was closed. The hallway at night is a different place. In the daytime, it's just a hallway. Stone floor, worn smooth, a coat hook on the wall, a mirror with a dark frame that shows you the front door and a sliver of the room beyond. At night, with just the light from the kitchen falling across the threshold, the hallway becomes long, longer than it is in daylight. The coat hook casts a shadow that doesn't look like a coat hook, and the mirror shows not quite the same thing. I don't mean it shows something that isn't there. Nothing as dramatic as that. I mean it shows the room behind you in a way that is very slightly delayed. I noticed this one evening. I raised my hand, and my reflection raised its hand just after. Not much. A fraction. I stood there for a while, very still, watching the mirror watch me. Eventually I walked past it. I kept my eyes ahead. I do that now. When I pass, I keep my eyes ahead. Not because I think something terrible lives in it, just because some things, once seen, are easier not to keep seeing. The stairs creak. This is not unusual. Old houses, old stairs. What is unusual is the order. There are 7 steps. I know this because I counted them on my first morning, in the way you count things in a new place. When I go up, steps 1, 3, 5 creak. When I come down, steps 2, 4, 6. Always. Every time. I tried to alter it. I tried stepping on different boards, shifted my weight, moved closer to the wall. It made no difference. The same steps creak. 1, 3, 5 going up. 2, 4, 6 coming down. I mentioned this to Margaret the next time she called. There was a pause on the line. Then she said, "Yes, that's just how the stairs are." She moved on quickly after that. But here is the thing that I did not mention to Margaret. One morning, I woke before dawn, and I heard the stairs, not my steps, not someone else's. The stairs going up by themselves. 1, 3, 5, and then nothing. And I lay in the dark, and I waited, and the stairs did not come down. There is a room at the end of the upstairs hall that I didn't notice for the first week. This sounds implausible. The house is small. There are 3 upstairs rooms. How do you fail to notice one? I don't have a good answer. All I know is that for the first week, when I walked the upstairs hall, I walked from my room to the bathroom and back. Left, right, right, left. And on the 8th day I turned right instead of left and found a door. Old wood, old handle, set slightly deeper in the wall than the others, as if the house had preferred to keep it quiet. The door was unlocked. I don't know if it had been locked before. I hadn't tried it. I hadn't known to try it. I pushed it open. Cold air came out, noticeably colder than the rest of the house. The room was empty, almost. In the corner, facing the window, a chair. Not the chair from downstairs. A different one, smaller, darker. Its back to the door. Someone, something, had carried a chair up here and set it to face the window. And outside the window, visible from the chair, the lane, the gate, the long view down to the road. I sat in the chair in the cold room. I don't know why. It felt, in the moment, like the right thing to do, to sit where whoever had sat, to see what they had seen. The view from that window was better than from the east room, cleaner, less distorted by the old glass. From here you could see the full length of the lane from gate to road. You could see anyone coming or going. I sat there for perhaps half an hour. The cold deepened around me. Not unpleasant, just present. The kind of cold that has been living in a room for a very long time. Nothing moved in the lane. The hedgerow, the grey sky, the distant shimmer of the road. But after a while, I began to understand something about the room, about why the chair was there. Not placed to see who was coming, placed to see when they were gone. A vigil chair. The chair you sit in when you are waiting for someone to leave, or for something to pass, or for a particular arrangement of the world to finally resolve itself. I left the room quietly. I left the door exactly as I had found it. I didn't go back in, but I thought about it. Every day, the curtains in the bedroom are heavy, dark wool, the colour of winter earth. They block the light entirely. On still nights, they hang perfectly still. On the night I'm thinking of, a night with no wind, no sound from outside, windows closed and latched. The curtain on the left side moved, not dramatically, a slow, gentle movement, the kind a curtain makes when a window is left open just a little. But the window wasn't open. I lay in bed and watched it. In the dark I could just make out its shape, the way it shifted, once, then settled. I thought about drafts from under the door, gaps in the old stonework, something so small I couldn't feel it, just enough to stir heavy wool. I held these explanations up carefully, examined each one, and the curtain moved again. I pulled the covers up. I turned over. In the morning the curtain was perfectly still, and the window was closed, and I felt, in the sensible morning light, a little foolish, only a little. The curtain moved again the following night, and the night after. Always the left side, always once, then still, as if something was checking that I was still there. In the study there is a writing desk, old mahogany, the surface marked with ink rings from cups set down over decades. 3 drawers on the right side, a leather writing surface, cracked at the edges. I found it on a Tuesday, in the second week. I had been avoiding the study. I realized, not deliberately, not from any decision I'd made, just not going in there. The desk was the only piece of furniture. The room was otherwise bare. The first 2 drawers were empty. The third drawer held paper, old paper, yellowed at the edges, perhaps 30 sheets unrolled, and on the top sheet, the beginning of a letter. The handwriting was careful, deliberate, the same hand as other things I had come to recognize in this house. It began, "I am writing this so that you'll understand," and then nothing. The rest of the page was blank, as if the writer had sat down with every intention of continuing, had found the words for the opening, and then found, at the critical moment, that the right words for what followed did not exist, or perhaps that they were not yet ready to write them. I put the paper back. I closed the drawer. I sat at the desk for a while, in the chair of whoever had sat there, understanding and not understanding, as you do in houses like this. I found the journal on a Thursday, on a shelf in the study, the kind of shelf you think is empty until light from a particular angle finds it. Brown leather, no name on the cover, no date on the spine. Inside, 40 years of careful handwriting, deliberate, upright. A person who thought before they wrote, who considered each word before committing it. Most entries were unremarkable. Weather, small repairs, a bird seen in the garden, a visitor, mentioned once, not described. I read for a long time. The afternoon light moved across the room, and near the back, midwinter, by the date, the last entry in the book, 1-9, 4 words. It happened again tonight. That was all. No entry before it explaining what it was. No entry after. The rest of the journal was blank. I sat with it for a while. I thought about the word again, about what it implies, that it had happened before, more than once, enough times that it had become, in a way, expected. I closed the journal. I placed it back exactly as I had found it. The next morning, it was gone. I had read more of the journal than just that last entry. I read it in the order it was written, all 40 years of it. What I read was this: a life, largely ordinary, the particulars of seasons in this house, which windows leaked in heavy rain, which tree in the orchard gave the best fruit, the names of neighbours, long gone by now, the slow change of the countryside around, but threaded through it, every few years, a different kind of entry, shorter than the rest, fewer words, the handwriting altered slightly, not shaky exactly, more careful, the kind of careful that isn't composed but controlled. These entries did not say what happened. They circled it. The cold room was colder again last night. The chair was moved to the window again. The gate, always the gate, referenced as a fact, not an event. The gate did what the gate does. The lane behaved as the lane behaves. And from the earliest entry to the last, one word that recurred, never explained, never named, she. She was here again. She didn't come inside this time. She stood at the gate until morning. She, 40 years of she. There's a name in this house, not in the journal. The journal never gave a name, but in one other place, behind the small painting in the kitchen, the watercolour of the lane in summer, the one I had barely noticed, scratched into the plaster of the wall, not carved deeply, done with something fine, a pin, perhaps, or a nail, tiny letters, close together, a name, and below it, a year, old enough that the year was distant, old enough that whoever it named would be long gone by any ordinary reckoning. I stood looking at it for a long time. Then I put the painting back. I said the name quietly, in the empty kitchen, and then I stopped, because the quality of the air in the kitchen changed, very slightly, just a degree. The way the air changes when a door opens in another part of the house. Just the faintest movement, the faintest shift, as if something, somewhere, had turned its head. The garden in daylight is different. In daylight it's comprehensible. You can see the structure of it, where beds had been, where a path was laid, where the apple tree has spread its roots and the ground around it rises slightly, lifted over years. But some things in the daylight garden don't quite follow the logic of it. The lavender by the back wall is flowering. It should not be flowering in this season. It is the wrong time of year by several months. I am not a gardener, but I know lavender, and I know that what was there was lavender in full bloom, in a season when nothing should bloom, and the roses on the east wall, the ones I had thought were long since finished, had new buds on them, tight, closed, considering, as if spring had found this garden while passing through, and decided, quietly, to stay a little longer, as if something in this garden could hold things past their natural time. I thought about that, about holding things, about what it would take, what kind of wanting, to hold something long past when it was meant to go. There is a well in the garden. I found it in the 3rd week, when I walked the far boundary for the first time. It's half covered by a flat stone, overgrown at the edges with moss so thick and so even it might have been growing there for a century. A very old rope hangs down into it, too dark to see the water below. I did not lean over it. I don't know why. Not from any specific fear. Just the sense that some things don't need looking into. That some depths are not asking to be measured. I knelt beside it for a while, and I noticed that the moss on the stone was not uniform. At one edge, the side closest to the house, there were marks in it, regular, evenly spaced. The marks you'd make if you knelt here regularly, if you knelt here often enough to wear even moss to the stone. Someone had knelt at this well, many times, in the same way, in the same place. For what? I don't know. I have a feeling about it, but feelings aren't knowing. I covered the well carefully with the flat stone, which lifted more easily than I expected, as if it had been lifted recently. On the 20th day, a man came to the gate. He didn't come through it. He stood outside it. I saw him from the east window. Old, or not old exactly, weathered. The kind of face that has spent decades outside. He looked at the house for a long time. Then he looked at me, at the window, directly, without surprise, as if he'd known I was there. I went outside. I said hello. He said, "Still here then?" I said, "I'm sorry." He said, "Some do, some don't. Stay, I mean." He looked at the house again. He said, "She doesn't mean any harm. She never did. It's just the way she is now." He said it the way you say something about a neighbour's dog, with a kind of resigned affection, an old understanding. I wanted to ask who he meant. I wanted to ask everything, but he had already turned to go. He walked back down the lane without looking back, and I stood at the open gate and watched him go. And I thought he called her she, the same she as in the journal. 40 years of she, still here, still recognized, still known. I went to the village the next morning, a small place, a pub, a shop, a church, the kind of village that has been the same size for several hundred years and intends to stay that way. I asked at the shop, carefully. I tried to ask carefully. About the house, about the lane, about how long the property had been managed by Margaret's mother, about who had lived there before. The woman behind the counter knew. I could see she knew. She had the look of someone choosing their words from a much larger vocabulary of truth. She said, "It's always been in the one family." Until it wasn't. She said, "The last one to live there was a long time ago now. By rights." I asked what she meant. By rights. She looked at me steadily. She said, "There are some people who don't quite leave a place, even after." She said it without drama, without lowering her voice. Just said it, as a fact of life. The way you'd mentioned that the road floods in winter or that the pub doesn't do food on Tuesdays. I bought what I'd come for. I walked back up the lane. The gate was open. The house was warm. The kettle was warm. As always, when I came back from the village, the house was different. Not in any way I could quantify. Not in any way I could point to and say, "That is wrong. That has changed." Just different. The quality of it. The feeling in the hall when I opened the door. I stood in the hall for a moment, not moving, the way you stand when you've walked into a room and forgotten why you came. Except I hadn't forgotten. I knew exactly why I had come in. It was the house that seemed to be considering it. The house felt more awake. I don't have a better word for it. Awake and attentive. In the way a room feels attentive when someone in it has been listening to something they didn't expect to hear. I set down what I'd bought. I made tea. I sat in the kitchen, and I thought about what the woman in the shop had said. By rights. Even the most cautious acknowledgement of it. Even someone as careful with their words as she was couldn't quite say. She has been gone for a long time. She had said, by rights. The qualifier that changes everything. By rights. But perhaps not in fact. By rights. But not here. Not in this house. Not on this lane. There is an attic. I found the hatch in the ceiling of the upstairs hall on the 22nd day. I'm not sure how I missed it before. Old wood. Old iron ring. Heavy. I pulled it open on a Saturday afternoon. Light from below fell upward into darkness. The smell that came down was extraordinary. Old timber. Old paper. Old fabric. Old everything. The compressed history of a house stored above itself. I went up. The attic ran the full length of the house. Low beams. Bare boards. Dust on every surface. Disturbed in places. Trails through it. Not footprints exactly. Just disturbances. As if something had moved through here recently. And hurried along the familiar route. There were trunks. 4 of them. Old leather. Brass clasps. 3 were locked. 1 was not. Inside. Clothing. Old. Folded carefully. Wrapped in paper. A woman's clothing. Preserved. Not with any particular effort or technology. Just kept. Just folded and wrapped by someone who had thought these should be kept. Someone who could not quite bring themselves to give them away. There was a mirror in the attic, not mounted on the wall, leaning against the chimney breast, face turned toward the wall. Old glass, dark frame, similar to the one in the hall. I turned it around. The attic behind me, the low beams, the dust disturbed in its trails, the open trunks, and me. But the mirror, like the one in the hall, took a moment too long. I turned around to face it and my reflection wasn't quite ready. And when it came, when my reflected face caught up with my real one, It looked different, not wrong, not frightening, different. The angle of it, the expression, the slight tilt of the head, as if the mirror had spent a long time showing someone else and hadn't quite finished yet. I turned the mirror back to face the wall. I went back downstairs. I closed the attic hatch. I sat in the kitchen for a long time after that, just sitting, the kettle warm beside me, the garden quiet through the window, trying not to think about whose face the mirror had been about to show me. The night before I decided to leave, everything was very quiet. Not the quiet of an empty house, the quiet of a house that has made a decision. The settled quiet, the after something quiet. I sat by the fireplace in the sitting room. The fire was low. The candles were lit. The third chair was in its place, at its angle. I looked at it for a long time. I said, quietly, to the room, "I know you're here." I don't know why I said it. It felt like the honest thing to do. The room didn't respond. Rooms don't. Or at least, rooms don't respond in ways that can be transcribed. But there was something, a quality in the air, in the particular quality of the candlelight, that felt like acknowledgement. Not yes, not confirmation. Just, I hear you. I have heard you. I have heard everyone who has sat in this room and said or thought or felt what you are saying now. I heard you. We are, in this moment, in understanding. That is all. That is enough. There is a clock on the mantelpiece, an old mantel clock, dark wood, brass fittings. The face is porcelain, slightly yellowed. It doesn't run. I noticed this on the first day. The hands are still, stopped at 7 minutes past 11. I don't know whether morning or night. I wound it once. On the second day, it ran for about an hour, and then it stopped again, at 7 minutes past 11. I left it alone after that. But here is the thing about that clock. Every morning when I come downstairs, the minute hand has moved. Not far. A fraction. The way a clock moves when it's running very slowly. Too slowly to see in the moment. But by the end of the week, the hand has moved nearly a full turn. It returns to 7 past 11 by Sunday evening. I know because I have been watching it. Because I have made it my business to watch. Something is keeping time. Just not the same time as the rest of us. Not the hours that pass for us in light and dark and work and meals and sleep. A different duration. A different measure. The time it takes for something to make its full, quiet circuit and return to the moment it cannot leave. 7 minutes past 11. Always. On my last night, I woke at 3. Not from any noise. I woke the way you wake when something is no longer making a sound it had been making. A silence that registers as an absence. I lay still. The house was quiet. No creak. No settling. No steps on the stair. No click of a teacup. Just a deep, complete quiet that had the texture of something that had only just become quiet. I looked at the ceiling in the dark, and then I heard it. Not inside the house. Outside. In the garden. A single footstep on the path. The old stone path. One step, and then nothing. I don't know how long I lay there. Long enough that the night deepened around me, and then began, very slowly, to lighten at the edges. I thought about going to the window. I thought about looking out. I decided not to. Not from fear, from something more like courtesy. Some moments are not for watching. Some presences are not for observing. Some things happen in this world in the dark, in the quiet, between one state and another, and the only appropriate response is to let them. In the morning, I came downstairs. The kitchen was as it always was, the light low and clean through the window, the lavender visible through the glass, still flowering, against all reason, and on the table, a teacup, turned right side up, clean, in the centre of the table. I had not left it there. I stood and looked at it for a long time. There is no explanation for a teacup. You understand that I know this. You understand that I have thought about it. Carefully, repeatedly, from every reasonable angle. A teacup on a table. It could have been there all night and I simply hadn't noticed. It could be nothing. But I knew, in the way you know things in that house, in the way things present themselves to you, they're not as facts to be verified, but as understandings to be accepted. I knew that it was placed, intentionally, in the moment after I came downstairs. Not for me, not really, for itself, the gesture of it, the habit of it. A cup, placed for morning, as it had been placed every morning for longer than I had been alive. I looked at the clock before I packed. The hands were at 7 minutes past 11. I stood there for a moment. I thought about all the people who had stood here before me, all the people who had looked at this clock and understood that it had stopped, and then understood, gradually, that it had not stopped at all, that it was doing something else, something none of them had a word for, cycling, returning, keeping a different kind of faith. I thought about the journal, the 40 years of it, the careful handwriting, the entry at the end. I thought about the chair in the cold room, facing the lane. I thought about a name scratched behind a painting, and I thought about whoever it was who, a very long time ago, had stood where I was standing and had found themselves unable to leave. Not trapped, nothing so dramatic, just unable, in the way you are unable to leave a place that holds something you can't take with you. Unable in the way that becomes, over time, a choice, then a habit, then their presence. I touched the clock face very gently with one finger. I said, I know. I don't know what I meant by that, only that it felt true. I packed slowly, not from reluctance. I don't think it was reluctance, more from the sense that it should be done carefully, respectfully, the way you move in a space when you understand it belongs to something else. I folded things. I didn't rush. And the house, while I packed, the house was very present, not disruptive, not interfering, just present, the way a person is present in a room where they don't want to speak but don't want to leave either. I heard nothing unusual, nothing moved, nothing changed, but the quality of the house, the particular density of the air in it, the sense of it as inhabited, fully inhabited, by more than just me, was very clear that morning, clearer than it had been at any point in my stay, as if, knowing I was leaving, whatever was here had come forward slightly, had stopped being quite so careful about making itself felt, as if the end of my visit had made a certain kind of presence feel, briefly, less risky. I laid a fire that morning, the last one. I don't know why. I wouldn't be there to tend it. I wouldn't be there when it burned down. I laid it carefully. The kindling, the wood from the basket, which was full, as always. I arranged it the way I'd learned to, over the weeks, and I lit it. The fire caught quickly. It always caught quickly in this house, as if the fireplace had a memory for fire, as if it knew what to do. I sat in front of it for a while, in one of the chairs by the hearth. Not the third chair. I never sat in the third chair. I sat there until the fire was properly established, until it was burning the way fires burn when they've been properly laid and need no further attention. Then I stood up. I said goodbye to the room. Not out loud. Not entirely out loud. Just clearly enough. Clearly enough for whatever was there to understand. The fire crackled. The third chair was in its place. The curtains were still. I picked up my bag. I walked into the hall. I did not look at the mirror. I pulled the front door closed behind me. The sound of it. The solid, old, settled sound of a door that has been closing on this house for a very long time. The garden was cold and very still. The apple tree. The lavender still flowering. The path underfoot. I walked slowly. At the gate, I turned. The house looked the same. Exactly the same as the first evening. Stone and windows and the deep-set door. But the fire I had lit was burning. I could see the faint shift of light in the sitting room window. And the east window, the window with the old glass, had a shape in it, standing to one side. Still as the figure at the gate had stood. Not threatening, not beckoning. Just there, just visible, just present, watching me go the way someone watches when they cannot follow, when they have watched people go from this window for longer than they can say. I held the gaze, or whatever it was, held mine, and then I turned, and I walked down the lane. The lane in the early morning is different to all its other selves. The hedgerow holds dew. The air is cold and particular, not the cold of winter exactly, but the cold of something at a threshold, the edge between one state and another. I walked slowly. I did not look back again after I left the gate. I walked the lane the way the lane should be walked, through it, beginning to end, in one direction, with your eyes ahead, the hedgerow on both sides, the pale sky above the gap, and the frost that settles on everything around this lane, but never on the lane itself. I felt it that morning more clearly than before, not as an absence of cold, as a presence of something else, a warmth so small it was almost not warmth, like the warmth of an old room that someone has just left, like the particular temperature of presence. The lane was still warm with whatever had walked it before me, had walked it for years before me, and would walk it, I suspected, long after. I left on a Saturday morning. I did not go back, not because I was afraid, not because anything happened that I couldn't explain with enough effort and enough willingness to reach. I didn't go back because some places are complete. Some houses have already found what they needed, or lost what they couldn't keep, and settled into the arrangement of it, the long, patient arrangement of it, that will hold them past any reasonable duration. Some presences are not asking to be resolved, not asking to be released, not suffering, not seeking, just remaining, the way a particular quality of light remains in a room where something was once very present and is present still, in the only way available to it. I think about the house often. The kettle warm at 2 in the morning, the clock at 11:07, the chair in the cold room, facing the lane, the name behind the painting, the frost that never settles. I think about the fire I left burning, whether it burned down, whether the basket was full again in the morning, whether someone sat in the sitting room after I left, in one of the 2 chairs by the fire, and felt, very quietly, the slight warmth where I had been, the way you feel warmth left behind by someone who was just there, and is gone now, and who will, perhaps, in some other arrangement of time, come back